Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Hong Kong content review, and today we'll be talking about Police Story 4 or Jackie Chan's First Strike. I've already done an unboxing video for this fantastic edition from Germany, a little meta book that basically features the theatrical cinema version, the standard version that's been around for a long time, and for the first time ever in full HD uncut Hong Kong version on the Blu-ray edition for this film of Jackie Chan's First Strike, which is very exciting. If you're very curious about this edition, there is an unboxing which I kind of showed a little bit about the menu and the audio options and all that stuff, so please go and check that out. So I'm very happy to have this finally, and it's very interesting timing because my initial plan was to do a sort of like a mini kind of trilogy of Jackie Chan films, essentially around the film Whisperer cuts. And this is a YouTuber who basically has done basically sorted out the best possible versions of these films in terms of the DVD quality, the Laserdisc, Blu-ray, and basically sliced together a version of the film, the uncut versions of 3 specific Jackie Chan projects that have been heavily edited or messed around with or not released to its kind of full benefit, essentially. And those 3 films are essentially The Protector, which I'll go into another time, Rumble in the Bronx, which is a big one, also one of his first kind of American films, also by Warner Bros., I believe, and of course Police Story 4 First Strike, which has 2 different cuts of the film. And the fact this one has kind of jumped ahead of that time, and now I don't have to rely on the film Whisper version, I can actually officially watch it on the Blu-ray edition, is very good, and it's showing that we are getting there very slowly with some of these more harder access versions of the films from Jackie Chan's lineup. Now we'll be doing 2 separate reviews for those 2 films as well, as mentioned, and talking about the different cuts and why I think they were quite important to discuss and kind of dive into a bit more kind of topic with Jackie Chan's kind of earlier kind of projects, very specific films. I'm very happy that we at least do have Drunken Master 2 on uncut version, and we have of course Mr. Nice Guy extended and theatrical as well. So a lot of these films are getting that kind of eventually the 5-star treatment. I definitely think this edition is going to go out of print very soon, if not already. I do think eventually we are going to get a bit more of a worldwide mainstream version, whether it's down to Warner Bros. Themselves, whether it's down to 88 Films cutting a deal, but clearly they have access to the license and it's for a limited time, for a limited period. Now, Police Story 4 is a very interesting one for me, being the fact I grew up with this film. This is one of the kind of the very first kind of Jackie Chan movies that I watched when I was younger. As mentioned a few times on this channel, I never grew up on Hong Kong cinema, but I was aware of Jackie Chan and his influence on Western movies, with Rush Hour movies, of course, Who Am I, and of course Jackie Chan's First Strike, which you would always show on Channel 5 broadcast version on TV. It was always a film that was always available on TV to watch all the time, and it was one of those films I just always watched and always enjoyed because Jackie Chan is such a naturally gifted kind of talent, as I've described multiple times with his kind of movies. He's got a real likable kind of charming kind of persona in his films and his characters. He's always very funny, he's always very kind of highly skilled with his kind of martial arts, and as to be expected, my perception of Jackie Chan has changed over the years. We've seen more of his kind of earlier entry movies with Drunken Master, of course, seen the original Police Story movies for the first time during COVID, and getting a wider perspective of who Jackie Chan is in terms of his kind of Hong Kong career versus his Western career, and kind of see what kind of influence there is. And there definitely is some interesting kind of translation kind of thing there in terms of his kind of on-screen persona and his kind of personality and his larger-than-life kind of reactions and his martial arts, and it's interesting to kind of see that. And my perspective on this film has altered and changed. Now, Jackie Chan's First Strike, or Police Story 4, was released in 1996. This was not too long after Police Story 3. We got returning director Stanley Tong, which did Police Story 3, Supercop 2, and Rumble in the Bronx as well. So definitely had some collaboration doing a Western movie for Warner Bros. Already established relationship. Perfect director to kind of continue on another entry in the Police Story movies and taking Jackie Chan's character, the Supercop character, international, giving him a much bigger kind of wider appeal, and without relying on anything to do with the first 3 movies. I think I have talked about this in the initial reviews I did for Police Story movies, where kind of each entry feels very individual. You can watch them kind of individually, maybe apart from the second one. I think the second one definitely has a lot of reliance on the first movie or knowledge of it, being in fact the bad guys and kind of the aftermath of the first movie. However, once the first 20 minutes of that film is kind of done with, it's essentially its own film, essentially. The third movie is very separate, very individual, apart from some callbacks and references and some kind of a continuation of that character and his reputation being a super cop. This film doesn't have much reliance on that kind of trilogy, apart from Uncle Bill, which is the only returning character that comes back from the initial trilogy. No Maggie Chung in this one, which is, I think, a real shame. And I think it's a real sad that that character didn't have a chance to kind of join on Jackie Chan's adventure on this one, being a more bigger international film. But I understand the reasons why, because this is more of a him going abroad, him being assigned onto a very specific mission, similar to the third movie where he was kind of assigned by the military police essentially to kind of help out this kind of terrorist organization, go undercover. And this one's definitely up in the stakes with a collaboration and partnership with the kind of Russian kind of embassy, and basically trying to stop this kind of nuclear arms kind of trade that's kind of happening between China and the Russian kind of mob, essentially. So there's a lot of kind of political stuff going on in this film, a lot of shady bad guys. Turns out to be something a bit more complicated and not as black and white as we once thought. And that's essentially what the film is. It's just him going undercover, him finding out what's going on, and basically being betrayed and being messed around with by different kind of agents and different kind of people in power. And we're also kind of, you know, stopping the bad guys, essentially. Very simple plot. It goes from Russia all the way to Australia, which Australia makes a lot of sense, being the fact he would do Mr. Nice Guy. I think not too long after this film, a popular location for Jackie Chan's kind of films, being the fact he just loves that location, clearly. It's very sun, very bright, very different to kind of the traditional kind of Hong Kong kind of setting. And obviously this was backed by the Warner Brothers studio to make a big international big movie for Jackie Chan, and obviously launch his kind of career in a much more successful way compared to The Protector and Rumble in the Bronx did. And I think Rush Hour definitely kind of sealed the deal in that for sure during that kind of same time frame. Now, in terms of the film itself, I'm not going to dive heavily too much into it. This film's been out for 20 plus years. I think everyone and their mother has seen this film, whether you're a Hong Kong fan or non-Hong Kong fan. Everyone has seen First Strike, whether you watched it on broadcast TV, whether you've seen it on DVD, whether you've seen it on VHS. It's just very easy access. It's a very widely available film, and I think everyone knows what this film is. You know, whether you've seen Rush Hour or not, I think most people have recognized the poster because it's just an iconic, really cool poster with him right there. I always remember that very clearly. The film itself, I think, is pretty solid ultimately. I think it's a really solid film. And this one, he's having a lot more time. There's a lot more opportunity for him to have a lot more fun, you know, putting himself out there within various different locations for a fantastic opening kind of ski kind of lodge kind of section, which is amazing and really dangerous and just a lot of fun. Even more so within the uncut version, him going to Australia, of course, and having, you know, seeing the scenery and the beach kind of thing, and going to the aquarium. A whole massive section on that is fantastic. Going underwater, very fights. Obviously, this film is going for a 007 kind of vibe, and that's kind of how it's sold and marketed. And having that kind of underwater section being so extensive, it's definitely a throwback to Thunderball, kind of 007, but obviously he does it much, much better, and he's clearly having a lot of fun, again, doing comedic timing, doing interesting kind of fight sequences, having the dangerous kind of sharks kind of flying by, also having a lot of fun at the same time. So it's just a really good time in terms of the martial arts and the fight sections. I definitely think it's very sparing. One of the things surprising about watching this film again is that the kind of the action side of it is very staged. There's a lot of set pieces, especially within the kind of the ladder sequence during the middle part of the film, which is really awesome, really badass, you know, to kind of fighting with multiple other people and involving a ladder. Some very kind of dangerous kind of stunts there, and obviously the after credit scene during the end of the film basically shows how he did it and how he was injured himself, and he definitely puts himself out there for sure. So really good set block pieces of action and kind of comedic kind of timing in between, interesting locations, and Jackie just having a fun time, you know. And I think the tone of the film is down to preference, I think, you know, in terms of, do you want to see the uncut version of all that material in terms of the fight sequences, in terms of those block stage kind of fight sequences and set pieces. You're going to get the full uncut version on that, on the Hong Kong version, but also the tone of the film is definitely quite different. You don't get the kind of the poppy fun soundtrack. You get a lot more kind of a serious kind of more straightforward mellow kind of tone. It's not going for kind of a fun kind of attitude. It's just going for, this is a thriller, and we're going to treat it as a thriller essentially. And, you know, the comedy comes from just the natural situations that Jackie Chan gets himself into. So the scoring for the film is drastically different and changes how the film feels, alongside with a lot of extended sequences in terms of the original Mandarin language put back in versus the English. And then you've also got longer shots, longer sequences, more explanations. You've got a different opening of the film, a different ending of the film with the Russians. So I definitely think it's a more complete, more realized vision of the film compared to what the theatrical was, which chopped and cut various bits of violence out and a bit more of a fun kind of, you know, poppy kind of attitude towards it. It's a much more streamlined, more accessible version without any of the kind of the talky stuff that's in the Hong Kong version. So it kind of cuts out a lot of the stuff that maybe people at the time didn't want to see. They just want to see Jackie Chan doing some cool stunts and just going out there doing a 007 kind of thing, where the uncut version is a more realized, much more of a thriller version, being a longer cut. I think the running time definitely says a lot there. So this is, the theatrical was 84 minutes, where the uncut version is 107 minutes. So quite a big difference in terms of the runtime and how it's altered these scenes and the comedy and the tone of the film is definitely very noticeable. I definitely prefer the Hong Kong version. Definitely is the way to go for sure, and I think it just makes it a much more complete film. So what are your thoughts and opinions on Jackie Chan's First Strike? Please comment down below. What is your favorite of the Police Story movies? There is still 2 other movies in the Police Story franchise. There potentially might be another one which has been rumored of. I have seen New Police Story. I might watch it again for the channel, and Lockdown I've still yet to see. So what are your thoughts and opinions on those 2 movies? Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.